Okay, guys, so welcome. Today we are going to go over doing our seller documents with KW Command and Docusign. My name is Monica Perry. I'm your Market Center Tech Trainer for the Winston-Salem and Greensboro Market Centers. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we're going to always want to make sure that we're following our path to get paid. So if you visit my website, kwtriadtech.com, you will see down here below the YouTube channel some downloadable resources. You can click on this. And once you get in here, you will see the path to get paid. So this is the path that we follow every time. The first step is we want to enter our contact into Command with an email address. And then when that contact decides to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, you create an opportunity for them. And then you're going to go into your Documents tab, pick a checklist type, and start a transaction in Docusign. So those are the three steps we're going to kind of go over today. And I just wanted you guys to know that that resource does exist there for you. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that everybody has added their contacts into Command. So we're going to go down to our Opportunities Handshake. And our green pipeline is where our listings are. So we're going to create an opportunity. We're going to choose whichever market center if you're into, like I am. If you're on a team, make sure that you have your team selected. And then you're going to use the opportunity type of listing. For the owner of the opportunity, if you're an individual agent, you will see your own name here. If you are on a team, you will see your Rainmaker's name here. So let's go ahead and start typing in our client. So I'm going to select my client. As I type their name, you will see them populate here. And then if they have a co-client, you can also select them. For the purposes of today's class, I'm just going to have one person sign in the interest of time. So we're going to stop with that. Now for your listing, make sure that you add your opportunity name, including the listing address. This will make it easier for your MCA to get you paid when that time comes to find this opportunity and get this for you so you can get paid. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there. If you have any custom tags, of course, you can go ahead and use those. Give it an estimated list price. Pop in your commission rate. Make sure that we are changing our phases and stages to the appropriate phase and stage for where we are with our transaction, and we're going to create. Looks like I've got something in the chat. Oh, that's okay, Daniela. I'm glad that you're in here, honey. I hope you can hear okay. Okay, so now that we have created our opportunities, you can see that we're going to default into our Details tab of the opportunity here. So we can go ahead and add as much information as we can to this Details tab. So if you remember that green pipeline that was showing you your listings, it was showing you how much volume is hanging out in all of the different phases and stages of your opportunities. So you do want to make sure that you're entering when did you schedule your appointment, when was your appointment, did you win the listing at that appointment? If not, what date did you win it on? And the more data that you give to this system, the more it's going to give you back in the forms of metrics and insights into your business. So you definitely want to get the most out of the system. So make sure that you enter in those dates. I'm going to come on up to the property here, and I'm just going to pop in an address. You will see these are populated by Google. So it will begin to show up here. Now, if this is a new construction property, you will have to manually enter the address. So if you just kind of start typing a bunch of gobbledygook, sometimes you can get it to populate. Let me see if I can come up with the fake address. No, it's not going to want to let me manually enter it today. Oh well, we'll keep keep on moving. And if this is already active in the MLS by chance, then you can populate it by the MLS. But we're just going to stick with this address for right now. Now we have this address here that is going to auto-populate into Docusign for us. And our details tab is complete. We're going to move over into our documents tab now. On the left-hand side, we want to make sure that we pick out that checklist type. This one's going to be residential. There we go. So now for a listing, and this is the Winston-Salem's checklist. Greensboro, you're just going to look very similar. We have some different disclosures and things that are office specific, but otherwise pretty much in line. We need to get a copy of that MLS sheet. We need a working with real estate agents brochure signed, listing agreement signed, the residential property disclosure, the mineral oil and gas rights, and then of course that lead-based paint if the house was built prior to 1978. And there's an agent disclosure. So you'll notice in Greensboro, you guys have your own disclosures that you need to get signed, and deed, septic permits, and measurements, but we don't handle those really in Docusign. So does anybody have any questions about what we need to add, or does anybody have any questions about checklists at this point? Everybody feeling good? Okay, great. So anything that has this teal box next to it that says Docusign, this is going to auto-populate into the room for you. So you will notice I did not do this to the lead-based paint because not every house is going to need that lead-based paint. So I tried to be very intentional with which documents I made auto-populate into Docusign. That does not mean that you can't add additional documents as needed. So now that we have this done, we're going to come here to the Start a Transaction button. And if you use both, then you'll see both. If you only use one, then you'll only see one. I'm going to choose Docusign for today. And we'll let this open up Docusign rooms. Remember, if you click that button and you do not see Docusign open, it is because you have a pop-up blocker enabled and you want to disable that pop-up blocker, usually somewhere up here in this URL bar. All right, so you'll see those documents that I wanted to get signed already flowed into my room. Now, for example, on my property, I would need to get a lead-based paint done. So I can still come into the upper right corner and click the Add button and add from Docusign Forms any additional forms that I may need. We still have our groups. Winston-Salem will see for sale by owner, KWRE buyer forms, KWRE listing forms, KWRE vacant land forms. Greensboro, you guys will see buyer packet residential and listing packet residential. Then down below in our libraries, you do have your market center specific libraries, as well as the entire North Carolina Association of Realtors library, which contains all of the forms that are available to us. So these groups are just pared down sets of forms to make it a little bit easier on you guys. So here's that lead-based paint that I would need to have signed for my property. I can go ahead and add that selected document to my room. Now, if you have taken the time to set up templates, at this point is where you can apply those templates. So I can right click on my exclusive right to sell, apply my form template, choose it, and click apply. Okay. You can do the same thing with my working with real estate agents brochure if I had that set up. But the cool thing is, I'm going to take this chance to show it to you. Since I did have my exclusive right to sell listing agreement set up with the template, it included my name, my phone number, my email address, my license number, all that kind of fun stuff. So since I applied my template to that specific form, when I open up this working with real estate agents brochure, you will see everything that existed on that form also existed on that exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So it will go ahead and populate that stuff for me. hopefully. Internet, work with us now. Here we go. All right. So here's that working with real estate agents disclosure. You can see my name, license number, brokerage, all that stuff already populated. The address of the property populated from the details tab, which populated from command, right? So this is all good. We just need to check off our check boxes. Confirm with your broker in charge what boxes they want you to check. Save and close on your working with real estate agents. And should take us back. I do apologize, Daniela. Apparently, my internet is going to run really slow today also. So we are in the same boat. I'm going to try to hit this refresh button, see if we can't get this to do its thing. Just going to go back to my rooms and reopen it. And do keep in mind that once you've established the connection between command and the Docusign room, you'll see Dakota Perry listing 123 Main Street, same as command, Dakota Perry listing 123 Main Street right there. Once you have that connection established, you can bypass command and just go straight to realestate.docusign.com if you need to get something signed. That room already exists there for you and it is already connected to command. So here in our details tab, we will notice the address is in here. My client's name and email address is in here, which is great. We can go ahead and hit this edit button and add any additional information. It's always great to go ahead and populate anything into the details tab that you have so that you won't have to do it later on. So we could even pop in the listing date and the expiration date, like so, the listing amount, all of this fun stuff here, and get that populated in, and it will have that stuff flow into our documents. All right. So through with the details tab, we're going to move back into our documents tab here. And we've already got our working with real estate agents brochure ready to go. So now let's open up this exclusive right to sell listing agreement and take a look at that. So you will notice as this opens up, my clients pulled in from command, my brokerage is pulled in from both my templates and command. And all of this stuff that's already checked off for me, I set this stuff up in my template, right? So my template already had a lot of stuff checked off for me. The expiration date came from where I added it in the details tab. The property address came from the details tab. I can go ahead and put my block, my lot, my subdivision. We're just going to go through and fill out all of the text into this form that we need to add, like so. Work our way through. So any items that are leased and not owned, if none, NA. Items that don't convey, if none, NA. Personal property. Anything that the owners are letting go with the property. You can see on my home warranty, on my template, I already have it where I do not agree to pay for one. Now, if my seller did decide to do this, I can always change this, right? Just because my template auto-populated it doesn't mean that I can't make that change. What it does mean is, say I went through and filled a bunch of this out and then I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to apply my template. If something on the template doesn't match what I've already done and I add that template at a later time than when I started filling out the form, it will override anything that I've put into the form. So that is a good thing just to keep in mind. So listing price from the details tab, cash, FHA, VA, right? Which way will financing roll? 6% coming from my template. 60 days is coming from my template. So you can see a lot of stuff that you can fill in your template will save you time and effort. And you just have to set these up one time a year. So it's pretty good for you. And we can just keep rolling through. I've got all this stuff checked off already from my template. Keep rolling. And we're just going to make sure that everything that we need to be filled in is filled in to our form. Does anybody have any questions on this piece? I just want to make it very clear that under the Documents tab, we are only handling text boxes. We don't handle dates. We don't handle signatures or initials or anything like that while we're in our Documents tab of Docusign. So we're just going to keep rolling through, making sure everything is filled out. And then when I get down here, you can see where the template really shines is that I don't have to type any of this data in, which is super nice and a great time saver. So now I can go ahead and hit save and close on this listing agreement. We'll pretend like I filled everything out. If you haven't taken the time to read through your forms, I highly recommend it. Ooh, I see Docusign got a little update. We have nice little boxes that show up all the time now instead of when you hover. So that's new, just as of today, actually. So let's open up this residential property disclosure. You're going to see that when we pop into our residential property disclosure, that there's not a whole lot for us to take action on here because this is a seller completed document. So as we roll through here, the address is in there. That's coming from our details, but signatures and stuff like that, we don't need to handle any of it. We don't check any of these boxes off for our sellers or anything like that. So we don't have to do anything else to this form. It's already done for us and we can hit save and close. And you're going to notice the same thing on this mineral oil and gas rights. It will already have the property address filled in. Down here and the client's name filled in, but none of these boxes are checkable or clickable. And that is intentional because this is a seller signed form and a seller completed form. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close on that one. And lead-based paint, same situation. Let this open up. You'll see our address is in there. My client's name is in there. None of this stuff is checkable or clickable, and nothing down here because we don't handle signatures in the Documents tab. So now that we have all of our forms complete and we are ready to get signatures, we could either select them all and then we get this toolbar that pops up if we're getting all of this taken care of today, or if you just had a handful that you wanted to get taken care of, then you could just do a smaller set of forms. So I'm going to go ahead and select those forms and I'm going to click my create an envelope with a pin on the toolbar. Okay. Once I click this, it is going to create an envelope for me. This is where we do get signatures, and it is where it will give us the opportunity for our seller to handle all of those questions on the residential property disclosure, the mineral oil and gas rights, and the lead-based paint. So as we discussed on Tuesday, please make sure that you rename your envelope. It will make your life much easier. So we're just going to go ahead and name this listing documents for 123 Main Street, like so. And remember, we can reorder our forms here. So I would really like my working with real estate agents to come first, then my right to sell, residential property, mineral oil and gas, and lead-based paint. That's all a good order to me, matches up with my working checklist in command. Okay. So we're going to keep on moving down. And when we get to add recipients to the envelope, this is a super important place to take a pause and make sure that we are making the right selection. So we want to make sure that we are choosing pre-tagged roles at this point. So you can see you get this pop-up box. And once this happens, we're going to say, okay, who is signing this form with me today? So in this instance, it's going to be my seller 1. I don't have seller 2, and me as the listing agent. There's no seller 2. There's no seller entity, no buyers, no buyer agent. No one else is signing this today except for me and seller 1. So I'm going to check seller 1's checkbox and denote who seller 1 is. And what we're doing is the person that's in the details tab tagged as seller 1, which is Dakota, and me as the listing agent are pre-tagged so that all of our boxes for our clients to check and all of our initials and all of our signatures and dates, they are already pre-populated and ready to go so that we do not have to individually drag and drop them. So again, that's a very important step, adding recipients to the envelope from pre-tagged roles. So now that I have us chosen, I'm going to go ahead and click Add Selected. We'll give that a second to populate. There we go. Can write a nice, happy little message. So excited to get this home sold for you, right? Whatever we want to say to our client here. Maybe make sure to thoroughly read and answer all of the questions on your disclosures. Now, some sellers may not be comfortable doing these disclosures in Docusign. If that's the case, complete them with your sellers on paper, right? Some agents choose to leave behind the disclosures after their listing appointment. That is okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. You can just scan those and upload them into Command. But if you feel like your seller is confident in doing that through Docusign, just make sure that they understand what they need to do. And I will take this moment to let you know that whoever is seller 1 is going to be the person responsible for answering all the questions. Seller 2, if we had one, would not have any capability to check those boxes or do anything of that nature. Okay. So now that I have us selected, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And we will take a look at what these look like. As this envelope prepares for us, don't forget that we do have the ability to enter the recipient preview in the upper right-hand corner. And we also have the handy dandy preview over here on the right. So if I needed to toggle to a specific page to make sure that I had done something right, I can use this preview over here on the right-hand side to get to that page pretty quickly. But nonetheless, you will see, starting with working with real estate agents, it's got my seller's signature and date ready to go. Don't need to take any action there. It's got our initials down at the bottom of each of the pages. So all of that's looking good. And I want to show you these initials that are blank. They're not filled in, they're hollow. So you can see these are required initials. They're solid. These here are not required. So if I click on the initial and then you look over on the right, you can see that it's not a required field. So if you want to make sure that your client does in fact sign it, you can click the required button and make it solid. They will not be able to move forward without initialing this box, right? So just make sure, again, public marketing is not required. So if you want to make it required, you need to click it and then make it required over here on the right. Okay. So it's always good to kind of roll through. Is this going to be office exclusive? No, it's not. So in this instance, I don't even need this initial here. So I can click the box, I can either click delete down here on the lower right-hand corner, or I can delete it from my keyboard. So just make sure that you're rolling through these documents and making sure that everything looks right, because this is not going to be an office exclusive listing. So I do not need that signature. So page 6 looks good. Keep moving along. Moving along. All this looks good. All this looks good. Okay. Now, where's this page moved to now? Page 11, used to be page 10, is where our clients have to denote whether dual agency is okay with them or not. And considering that I'm lucky enough to work with 2 of the highest producing companies in the entire triad, it is very important that you have this conversation with your seller, because we both want our agents of our respective offices to be able to show our listings. If our sellers do not agree to dual agency, then the agents in our office can't show the property. That's not good for anybody. That is definitely not a win-win. So let's go ahead and have this conversation prior to signing these, so that we can go ahead and say, yes, my seller did authorize dual agency. I'm going to click that box and make it required. Right? And so I'm going to show you with this recipient preview that I spoke of, what this looks like if you don't take that action. So if I move into the recipient preview, right now I'm viewing it as myself. I want to view this as my seller. I'm going to switch over to my seller's view. And you can take action just like your seller will need to. So your seller will have to click start, and then they will have to click to sign. Page 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's this one. We made those required. Get this bottom signed. We're on page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, did you see what just happened? It moved me straight over the top of these down to the bottom of the next page. So one thing is for sure is that probably it's not going to get signed correctly if you don't go ahead and make that choice for the system prior to sending this. Either the seller's not going to see these boxes because it just skipped over the top of them, or if they're going through, they might have questions on it. They might accidentally sign all of the options, none of which are correct, right? So instead of causing that confusion, might I recommend that you go ahead and have that conversation and say, okay, my seller said dual agency was good. I'm going to move to the right and make it required. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete these extraneous boxes, because I've already had this conversation and already have an agreement for dual agency. So then when we move into recipient preview again, you can see it is much more clear what they are supposed to do when they click start and begin to sign. Go a little bit faster this time. It is going to make them sign the dual agency. It's not going to skip over the top, which is exactly what we want. So pro tip, super helpful. Page 4 of buyer agency, page 11 now of the listing agreement is where you need to make those choices. So we'll keep rolling through and making sure that everything looks good. Everybody's initials, signatures, dates, all that's there for us. And now let's get into this disclosure. So here on the first page, not a whole lot of activity. Our owner just needs to sign. But when we get into page 2 through 4 is where all of these questions are. Now, just like those above initial boxes that were not required, none of these selections are required because the system does not know the answer to these questions. So again, we're going to move into the recipient preview. I'm just going to take you all the way down to that disclosure. And just remember, it will always be seller 1 who is responsible for these boxes. So let me get down here. So if you had 2 sellers in, Just make sure that seller one is the one that knows all the answers to these questions or is better equipped to find them out. So you can see there's nothing really showing them that they have to do this. It's only going to take them down to that next required initial, but they can, in fact, begin to look through and say, what year was this built? It was built in 63. Is there any problem with the foundation? No. Right? So you need to make sure that they know that they need to go through and answer these questions before they complete signing. So it's the same thing down here on mineral, oil, and gas rights. They need to sign or make their selections before they sign down here. Same thing on lead-based paint. These initials are required, but do they know of lead-based paint or not? So they need to make those selections and sign. So again, super functional for when you want your sellers to be able to sign their disclosures online, and probably a good idea to go ahead and have maybe a templated email with some instructions that say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just make sure that you know, Mrs. Seller, you're going to be signing and you're going to be answering all of the questions on these disclosures. Here are some tips and tricks on how to do that. And if you just have that text saved somewhere to your computer or your phone, you can just copy it in and make sure that anytime you're sending these documents to your clients, that they get to answer those questions, that they know exactly how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit send at this point. Everything looks good. And we'll take a look at what it looks like from our end first. As the agent, it is going to say that we need to sign. We are signing the listing agreement only. So we're going to let this open up. And here we go. We're going to click continue and start. It's going to take us right over that working with real estate agents. We do not need to take any action on that form. Only page 1 through 13 of the listing agreement are we going to sign, like so. I love to hear all the stories about how the listing agreement used to just be one page. And we also have to sign on this second page of the lead-based paint. I always love those stories from brokers that have been in the business. I remember when the listing agreement was only one page long. That's just crazy talk, isn't it? It's hard to imagine now that it's 13 pages long. Okay, so now you can see that the listing documents are waiting on others to sign. So let's pop on over into our seller's email address and look at this from their perspective. Okay, so remember this is seller one. So this is how the email will look. And we wrote that happy little message down here so that they get to read that. And they're going to click on review documents. If your clients have never used Docusign before, we'll let this get open. But when they first get started, if they've never used Docusign before, they will need to adopt their initials first. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue and start. At this point, when they tried to sign the first time, it would say, please select and adopt these initials, and they would just say, okay. But I've already done that for this client or the sample client. So this is what the client is going to see from their perspective as they work their way through and get everything signed. So you can see it is defaulting them over to sign what was once a not required box. They now need to initial, which makes it a little bit more clear for them, and sign. And now they're into these disclosures. So this is why it is so important to give your client that instruction on what action to take on this disclosure. So yes, they're going to sign page 1, but then on page 2, they do need to start going through and making these answers and all of this kind of fun stuff, like so. Whoops. Right? and they want to make sure that they answer all of the questions. So again, if your clients don't feel comfortable doing this online, make sure that you give them the option to do this on paper with you answering their questions. Okay, but these are not for us to fill out. They are for our sellers to fill out. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to make it all the way through all of these disclosures, but you can see they need to sign, they need to answer the questions and all that kind of fun stuff. You might want to give them a little bit of guidance, not telling them what to answer, but maybe just letting them know on the mineral oil and gas rights. If you have no idea what happened before you lived there, then you probably need to check no representation. If you yourself did not sever the mineral rights from the property, then you would check no, right? So maybe giving them a little bit of guidance there. And we'll just go ahead and finish this out like so. Oop, missed one. And then they can finish. So they can finish. None of those selections are required on that document, on that residential property disclosure. Just make sure that your sellers are aware. It's going to ask them if they want to create a Docusign account. They can always say no thanks if they don't care to. Now, under our Documents tab, we should now have 2 copies of each form. The original form version, and coming soon, once the internet catches up with us, the signed version will pop up alongside. There we go. So now we have a signed exclusive right to sell listing agreement and the form. So if we needed to go back at a later date, if something was wrong or we needed to change something, then we can open up this original form version, make any changes that we need to make, and resend it to our sellers for signatures. So this takes a little bit less time than our buyer documents does. So this really brings us to the end. Of course, you're going to come back into Command. You're going to choose where you're attaching your files from. In this case, it is Docusign. We're going to take this working with real estate agents and attach it where it goes. Same thing with our listing agreement, residential property, mineral oil and gas, and in this case, the lead-based paint. And once we have everything done, we are going to submit it to our market center for compliance purposes. So I hope that this helps you guys out. I know I get a lot of questions on Docusign. And do we have any questions before we end the class? All right, fantastic. Well, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.